Solar PV Cast by Shift, a podcast exploring solar energy and the role it plays in improving our lives and our planet. Here's your host, Chris Palliser.
It is another episode of the Solar PV Cast. My name is Chris, and you're going to want to stick around for this episode. Not only are we going to be talking about the largest solar farm in Canada, the Travers Solar Project, 1.3 million panels, 3,300 acres, 465 megawatts, but we're also going to be talking to one of the people behind it, the CEO of Greengate Power. That was the developer on the project. And joining us for this episode of the podcast, we're excited to have him here. Also, I should add, one of Alberta's top 50 most influential people and Earnest and Young Entrepreneur of the Year, Dan Balaban. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate the invite.
Well, the Travers Solar Project, actually, you know what? Before we dive into the project, we'll cover all the specs and the amazing stats and what it took to do the project, but a little bit about yourself and Greengate Power, if you wouldn't mind.
I'd be happy to. So I'm Dan Balaban. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Greengate Power. What Greengate does is we're a developer of large-scale renewable energy projects. We've been doing it successfully, primarily focused on Alberta for the last more than 17 years. We're based in Calgary. We've, had the, good fortune of being behind some really amazing projects. We like to do the precedent-setting projects. So, we've done a number of projects, but in our past includes development of Canada's largest wind project, and then more recently successfully developing Travers Solar along with a number of partners, which is the largest solar project in Canada now in Canadian history. Real precedent-setting project, proving I think what's possible. Maybe a bit about my own background, how I got into this, if you're interested. So I grew up in Calgary. Went to school to University of Toronto, where I graduated with a degree in computer science. I started my career, though, in tech consulting, helping to deploy this new technology called the internet to solve business problems early on in my career. But growing up in Calgary, you can't, one can't help but grow an appreciation of the natural landscape and the environment. So this is something that an issue that I've cared about for a long time. Left consulting. First company I started up was a software company called Roughneck, which was actually an oil and gas software application that, amongst other things, helped oil and gas companies report their greenhouse gas emissions on an annual basis. And this is going back to the early 2000s. So, that gave me early insight into some of the looming environmental challenges that I could see the energy industry facing. I had a successful exit from Roughneck at the age of 30. It's going back a while now. But, I knew that the next thing I wanted to do was an exciting business challenge and also something that could leave a, positive, lasting environmental impact. So with no experience, no prior experience in power, but with my own capital, started Greengate, like I said, more than 17 years ago with my brother Jordan.
Wow, very cool. That is something that we're finding a lot in the Canadian solar industry right now. A lot of people kind of coming from different backgrounds. I was in broadcasting, and here I am in the solar industry because it is such a new industry. Obviously, you had the environment on your mind, and I think that only makes our industry better, having all these different perspectives.
Absolutely. I think, any type of new business undertaking or, a job, if one can, it really helps to find something that it really helps to have the opportunity to work on something that one is passionate about. So in my case, I'm, really passionate about, renewable technology and the ability for it to create a more sustainable future, for all of us. It's also really exciting, business, and I like, taking on challenges. So, so that happened to be my particular, passion for it. Everybody's, a little different, but if you can tap into that passion, I think amazing things are possible.
Couldn't agree more. Did Greengate, when you started this, did you say on day one, okay, we're going to install absolutely massive renewable energy systems? Or did you start residential? Like, how did you just jump straight into, obviously you didn't go straight to Canada's largest solar farm. There were some steps, but did you have that mindset right out of the gate?
Yeah, I have the go big or go home mindset.
Nice.
So there's that, but really when we decided to get into the renewable energy business, I'd looked around at what was going on in renewables all over the world, and going back 17 years ago, there were at that time there were a number of places that had just started developing large scale renewable energy projects. Places like California, Texas, some projects in Europe. It was just starting to emerge. Alberta has for quite a long time been developing commercial scale renewable energy projects. One of the first places in Canada to do so. But when we started, the developments at that time were relatively small. And I thought, well, there's no reason why, the large developments that we're seeing elsewhere in the world, couldn't work in Alberta. So really we were, I think what was unique about us is we were the first in the province and amongst the first in the country, really, because these are the, largest projects we've ever seen in the country, not just in Alberta, to imagine and have a vision for building, developing and ultimately building out these big projects. And, we were successful in doing so. So it, obviously a lot of steps to get there, but the first project we successfully developed at that time was the largest project in the history of Alberta.
Oh man, went straight for it, hey?
Yeah, it was double the size of the second largest project in the time, which was owned by, a large utility. When we were a couple of brothers, my other brother Mike worked with us as well, and we expanded the team over time. But it was pretty cool for a relatively small, nimble team with a relatively modest balance sheet to take on, an established industry with multi-billion-dollar incumbents and be able to pull off projects that they didn't even think were possible. So, anyways, first project was the largest in the province. Second project was the largest wind project in the country. Done a number of other large wind projects since, and then follow that up, like we said, the largest solar in Canadian history.
So, hadn't been in solar or wind, renewable energy specifically. 17 years ago, you're also fighting the fact that the industry was much smaller, and getting people to look at renewable energy, especially in Alberta, was an uphill battle. So you didn't take the easy road, hey?
No, I definitely didn't take the easy route. And it was not easy. It was a real grind. There were times where, didn't know if we were going to ultimately survive and be able to see the next day as a company. But through a combination of, some really hard work, an excellent, dedicated team, I think a great vision, we were able to, persevere and get to the other side.
Yeah.
And some good fortune along the way for sure.
Yeah. I mean, 17 years, you have, now in 2024, so you are very experienced. Again, we speak to this industry being relatively new in this country. So you now come with a tremendous amount of experience. How have you seen the perception of solar being a viable energy source for our portfolio in this country, and specifically in Alberta? How have you seen that landscape change?
Well, certainly renewable technology has come a long way in the almost 2 decades that I've been in the industry. When we started, wind was the most economic, I think, of the large scale renewables technologies. But we've seen tremendous cost improvements in solar, in batteries over the last decade. Solar costs down more than 90% from where they were over the last 10 years. Same sort of trend in batteries. Wind continues to get more economic as well. So technology is improving for sure. We're starting to see large scale projects that we hadn't seen before. In Alberta specifically, was leading Canada in renewable energy growth over the last 5 years. It's quite a phenomenal thing. Alberta, the heart of oil and gas country, leading Canada in renewables and being one of the top places in North America.
There's always the what? No way when you tell people that Alberta Oilers, really?
Yeah, the Flames are in need of some work as well.
Yeah.
But Oilers. There's more to Alberta than the Oilers and oil and gas. There's also this great renewable energy story to tell. However, what I think I'm seeing, which is becoming more intense recently, is the political division that is created by energy in this country. And that's quite concerning to me. So, like many issues in the world, I think probably most major issues in the world, things are framed in a very binary manner, demanding that we choose, one extreme side over the other. When I find the solutions are often in the middle. So energy is no different, and energy is definitely caught up in that. It happens to be one of the most important issues in this country, just given, our embarrassment of riches on the, the energy front. Mm-hmm. But it's resulted in some political moves that have been very harmful, I think, to the industry. So, here in Alberta, the provincial government imposed a moratorium on new renewable energy developments, which sent a very negative signal to the market. The moratorium has since been lifted, but there's a market redesign underway, and there's a lot of uncertainty that's been introduced into the Alberta market at the moment. But I think that is a symptom of the politics of division. On one side, you have the federal government, which is trying to impose a very ambitious net zero by 2035 grid target on all the provinces. And then Alberta, as an example, pushing back on that, with, imposing a moratorium and stuff like that. And the renewable energy industry's caught the crossfire. Mm-hmm. And that's very, it's very concerning, right? Because we need to be working on solutions rather than fighting. And the fight does not serve us. It's working on the solutions that excite people like me.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I've had Heather McKenzie on from Solar Alberta actually on the podcast to chat about the moratorium when it first came out. That sent a lot of mixed signals. I completely agree. And it further created that divide. And it kind of went backwards on what Alberta is. I mean, my opinion, BC guy, is that Alberta is kind of like, this is my farm, this is my farmland, I can do what I want, and the government supports that. But then here they were saying, oh no, wait a minute, you can't do that anymore. Anyways, we could go on for hours, I'm sure, on the divide, as you said, but that's not going to solve anything. Like you said, it's about getting to the table in the middle. I had the CEO of Chroma Energy Group on from Tennessee, actually, and it was a really great conversation. And he was excited, speaking, of course, about the United States, about how, thanks to the costs that you mentioned, the cost savings, people can now make money with solar, specifically renewable energy, because of the tech advancements. And then, of course, the environment side of things, climate change and what we have to do to address that. He was excited that it was almost a place where people are actually now meeting in the middle. And it kind of brought the left and the right together. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, it certainly seems to have happened in the United States. So the United States has, adopted the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, which is, very robust set of things that are included in that. Had, broad bipartisan bipartisan support, and it includes, very aggressive incentives to promote more sustainable sources of energy in the United States. Canada's playing catch up on that. We have a set of our own, incentives that have been put forward by the federal government in response to the Inflation Reduction Act. Things like investment tax credits that have been put forward. They've been talked about for quite a while now. They're still not into law, although it looks like that is imminent.
Real close, I heard. Yeah.
Real close, yeah.
Royal
so that,
assent
that's
is
really
somewhere in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, awaiting royal assent.
Yes,
which sounds very regal, but I'm anxiously waiting for the royal assent, and I think that'll be great for the industry and will help with with us competing on the international stage. Particularly with our neighbors south of the border.
Yeah. Do you find when you're talking to investors, companies, people are more open to renewable energy now?
Yes and no, I would say.
Okay.
So, I think amongst investors, there's a tremendous amount of interest to invest in good renewable energy projects. There's a tsunami of capital out there, and that's growing, and it's ultimately because a number of the largest investors in the world, primarily pension funds and infrastructure funds, and the utility companies that they ultimately fund, they're looking for to make impact investments, but more importantly, investments that deliver a long, stable return, which renewable energy projects do. They're great assets to own for those sorts of entities. So, I think that's definitely changed. The public discourse on it, I think, is becoming a little more polarized on the topic, which I think is, creating some of these political dynamics that I think are probably the biggest issue that the industry faces is we can't keep on going back and forth between our objectives. Mm-hmm. These projects take a really long time to develop. Businesses, to move into this space are making significant investments, and we need a stable political and policy landscape within which to operate if we're ultimately going to try to get to where we need to be, which is a more sustainable future.
What do you think about, I don't want to further the divide, but what do you think about the equality and how renewable energy is looked at compared to oil and gas? I mean, you're right in the middle of it. This moratorium was all about, well, hold on, let's not get ahead of ourselves here, and let's really think about how to do this renewable energy thing. Well, does oil and gas get the same treatment? I don't think so. I'm not in that world, though, so maybe you can share some insight.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to get the same sort of treatment, but renewables is something new, right? Mm-hmm. So it's still relatively new, but there's a very well established industry in oil and gas. There's companies that are quite influential and important to our economy, and they have an important voice in the decision making that goes on in this country. The voice of companies that are investing in more sustainable sources. That influence is growing as well, and you're finding companies that are investing in both types of energy, growing and growing. So, I ultimately it follows the money, and
right.
there's a I think a myth which is important to dispel, is that renewables require massive subsidies. That is no longer the case. Renewables are cost effective on a standalone basis. What the incentives do is make sure that any one jurisdiction remains competitive with another. So Canada remains competitive relative to the United States or Europe or Asia as an investment destination for these big investors that are investing in this space and are looking to invest anywhere in the world. So it's a complicated set of dynamics.
Yeah,
But,
I hear you.
It's fun to navigate through.
And that's just what we're all trying to do, right? We're trying to navigate this, both sides. If you want to say sides, I agree with you. There's no sides. Just we as residents and citizens of Canada are trying to figure out renewable energy. And I'm really excited about the future. And to speak to Alberta, you've got Sterling, Alberta. That is Canada's first net zero village. So the public support is there. And like you mentioned, the incentives are coming. The government is catching up. That 30% tax credit is going to be big. And we're going to start to see bigger and bigger projects. Speaking of bigger projects, the Travers Solar Project. It is Canada's largest solar farm, 465 megawatts. AC, I believe, almost 700 DC, if That's I'm correct. Not mistaken. 1.3 million panels, 3,300 acres of land. This is a massive undertaking. Now, to your point, go big or go home. How did this come about for you, Dan?
Well, I shared with you how we started Greengate, and focused on wind and had quite a bit of success in wind. But we're a renewable company, so we keep our eyes open. We're technology agnostic, and so I remember going to we go to the solar conferences all the time, probably a few a year, and we went to one particular one in Edmonton in 2017, and the message was the same we saw over the last number of years. The graph where the cost curve is going down and showing that it's going to reach parity at some point, and it showed at that time it's going to reach parity by 2020. So I remember going back, reflecting on the conference with my team, and can I swear on here?
Yeah, sure. Go for it. It's a podcast.
Okay. And we're like, well, let's just build the biggest fucking solar project that anybody's ever seen.
That's the line.
Yeah. And that's what we did.
Oh my God. Amazing. That's got to be on a t-shirt. Is that on a t-shirt? It's got to be on a t-shirt.
It's not, but that is the story, right? It gets started with this bold, kind of objective.
Yeah.
And then, obviously a lot of work that goes into seeing it, but we just saw the opportunity just with, it turned out that way. The project ended up starting construction in 2020 and was completed in 2022.
How long? I mean, I think I read 500 jobs, like obviously employed a lot of people. What is the process, not to get to the granular details of it, but from that moment of let's build the fucking largest solar project in Canada to flicking the switch, talk about what that looked like and what that took.
Yeah, so our role was as the developers of the project. So we had this bold idea, great team to execute on it. I can't emphasize that enough. Really love my team that I've had an opportunity to work with, the pleasure to work with, including my brothers.
Every day or sometimes?
No, I'd say most of the time.
Oh,
there was some tense moments, but not driven by my team, driven just by the nature of the challenge we've taken on. But first thing you got to do is try to find a site to host something that's that big. One of the wonderful things about Alberta is we've got a lot of land, but once you start layering on top all the various constraints, you want to find a site near power lines that has a good resource, that's buildable, doesn't have environmental concerns, and on and on and on. You start to narrow it down. But finding a site, finding a community that's receptive to it, which we were able to do, and then it's really trying to put the key commercial pieces of the project together. So obtaining all the various permits that are required, which is a multi-year process. working on all the key commercial contracts, the EPC contract, the offtake agreement. That is probably one of the most critical things in the case of Travers. That project is selling its power to Amazon under long-term contract, which was a key enabler of the project. And then ultimately, once the project is near construction ready, we brought in a big partner on that project, Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners. They're one of the world's largest renewable energy focused funds. They're based out of Denmark. They invest all over the world, but their first investment in Canada was in Travers Solar.
Wow, cool.
So we brought them in. They took the lead during construction. PCL was the EPC firm on it, we played a supporting role on that, but basically, handed it off to the experts to build it out, got to watch some tremendous construction work going on. That was really cool. But and then ultimately 18 months later came online.
Wow, incredible. Obviously that's got to be kind of the feather in your cap. I mean, it goes along the lines of Greengate, right? You started with this idea, and how cool was it for you personally to kind of see that handoff happen and say, wow, we did it, guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's tremendous, right? Like, we had our vision, we invested millions of dollars over several years and navigated through a complex process with a lot of doubters. There are a lot of people that didn't believe that a solar project of that scale could work in Alberta. And as an entrepreneur, especially an entrepreneur that has a preference for doing disruptive initiatives like me, you have to get used to people. You have to get used to the naysayers, and I guess in my case, kind of fueled me to a certain extent.
Hey, yeah, perfect.
So it feels pretty good to be up there and see this almost $1 billion project that started with an idea in our minds. Out there. It's about the greatest thing you could achieve as an entrepreneur, that sense of satisfaction to see the idea turn into reality.
Yeah, largest in Canada. And I don't know if there's any plans to, who knows, 10 years from now, someone will be out there to beat it. But then Dan will come back and say, okay, well, I'm going to beat that one. To put it in perspective for you watching and listening about the future of solar, we talk a lot about the future. Now, Travers Solar Project is the largest in Canada, 465 megawatts. I just read, Dan, I don't know if you know about this, but last week they just flipped the switch on one in China that is 5,000 megawatts. Unreal. So, I don't know if you can speak a bit to the growth of the industry and what the future looks like in your mind.
Yeah, that project's incredible. I did read about it. China is a completely different place with, the way they conduct business and the sorts of infrastructure projects that they're able to pull off. So very impressive. But solar is now, the lowest cost source of new power generation that we have available to us. That's according to the International Energy Agency. It's been the case for a few years now, and it's growing at a tremendous rate. It's one of the fastest growing sources of new power generation that we've seen. So I think it's it's an industry that is going to see lots of growth. I think it's really important, though, to understand that it's not an all or nothing sort of thing. It's not like the world is going to move to all solar, and then we're going to be shutting off the taps to oil and gas. It doesn't work that way. There's a transition or an evolution that's underway in our energy system. It's one that's going to take time, but solar is tremendous technology. Like solar PV, what an amazing thing! You have some glass with some circuitry in it, and the sunlight hits the glass and turns it into electricity without any moving parts. Like it's incredible. It's actually paradigm shifting compared to any other source of technology. However, it has its limitations. It only produces when the sun shines. It doesn't produce at night. So what do you do? When those conditions don't exist? There's things emerging like battery storage to try to smooth some of that out. But I think we ultimately need a mix of energy sources in our energy system, and solar is going to be taking a bigger chunk of the pie as time goes on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I don't think it's about saying no to anything. It's meeting in the middle, like you've said a few times. Coming to the table, say, look, this is what we can bring, this is what we can bring, and this benefits everybody.
One of the things I'm probably most excited about or interested in at the moment is the growing needs that we have for energy. Like we need all forms of energy going forward, because our uses for electricity in particular are increasing. So we have got a growing population all around the globe here, including here in Canada. It's a great place to live. People are moving here. But then, you've also got growing uses for electricity through the electrification of everything, of buildings, of industry, of transportation, through electric vehicles, and more recently, which is getting a lot of talk, is energy demands of data centers and AI, which is growing at a phenomenal rate. So I actually think the world is in the not too distant future going to be lacking energy sources. So that's why, relatively short energy sources. So I think it's really important that we pursue an all of the above strategy, a focus on, trying to be, more sustainable as time goes on, but certainly not say no to anything.
This is a fact I love sharing. Any speaking engagements I do, anything like that, every second, 174,000 terawatts of energy are hitting our planet from the sun. If we could harness all of that energy in solar panels, it would take 1 hour of collecting that energy to provide enough power for the planet as it is now. Just 1 hour. So, I kind of saw your face light up. Light hitting glass generates electricity. I'm vibing with you. It's the exact same for me. It's there. It's not perfect recycling, and there's mining still that takes place. But as soon as we can figure recycling and things like that out, there's going to be opportunities to make that. And you mentioned as well, costs have come way down. And to kind of circle back to kind of, young Dan starting out in the world, it was all about the environment for you. And we can't ignore the fact that our environment is changing. And so it does come back to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we need to, we just need to take care of our environments to ensure that, the sustainability of human civilization. I think that's ultimately, but it's important to understand the planet. People say save the planet, but it's not about saving the planet. The planet will be fine. The planet's been here billions of years. It's humans. It's our ability to live here in a sustainable manner. I think that's ultimately what we're working for, for future generations. But I keep on coming back to, there are multiple things we need to consider. In the case of energy, it's a triangle problem. You've got sustainability, affordability, and reliability. Those three things. And at the moment, with the technologies we have out there, we're able to achieve 2 out of the 3. We're not yet able to achieve the trifecta, the 3 out of the 3. Oil and gas is relatively affordable and reliable, but it has its sustainability issues. Solar is relatively affordable and sustainable, but it doesn't produce 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Adding storage into that makes it more expensive. Adding carbon capture, for example, to oil and gas makes it more expensive. So this is all playing
again? Sustainability, affordability,
and reliability.
And reliability, of course. I love how you put that. And yeah, you're right. This works great for here, but not for here, which is why we've got to come together.
got to come together, and but it also creates an interesting opportunity, right? There's clearly a problem out there that is looking for a solution. How do we find that? How do we create that trifecta, right? And that's what innovators and entrepreneurs are working on.
I feel like you wake up every day and try to figure that one out. Is it on the fridge? You open the fridge, there's the trifecta. How can I get the trifecta today?
Yeah, well, it's I've taken on lots of really cool projects. It's also good to have some time to breathe. So I've been taking some time to breathe lately. But yeah, it's exciting times for sure.
You hit the nail on the head. It's exciting times for sure. Well, thank you very much, Dan, for taking the time to have this conversation on the Solar PV Cast. And we talked about the Travers Solar Project, but we also kind of talked about a lot more. And I think that's what's needed to keep the conversation going. So thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Once again, that's Dan Balaban, CEO of Greengate Power, the developers behind Canada's largest solar farm, the Travers Solar Project. Thank you for listening to the Solar PV Cast, and Dan, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks.
The Solar PV Cast by Shift with Chris Palliser. To begin your solar journey, visit shift.ca.